Tonight on Newshub Late, political shockwaves as Jacinda Ardern calls time as Prime Minister, while Helen Clark is blaming social media. The race is on to find a new leader for Labor and the country, so who are the top contenders? Food prices jump again. What's behind the biggest annual increase in decades? Also tonight, what's killing the yellow-eyed penguin? Scientists think they have the answer. And if you're just catching up on what you've missed today, we've got you covered with our 90-second Need to Know. Tonight's big story, and it's a huge one. Election 2023 has just been blown wide open. The Prime Minister announcing she's resigning from the top job and setting October 14th as the day Kiwis will head to the polls. We'll have reactions shortly, but first here's a recap of today's announcements.
And so today I'm announcing that I will not be seeking re-election and that my term as Prime Minister will conclude no later than the 7th of February. I know what this job takes, and I know that I no longer have enough in the tank to do it justice. It's that simple. But I'm not leaving because it was hard. Had that been the case, I probably would have departed 2 months into the job.
Well, joining me now is political commentator Bridget Morton. Kia ora, Bridget. Thanks very much for coming on with us tonight. Were you as surprised as everyone else about this announcement?
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the key things is that, Ardern was really clear going into the end of last year that she had a lot of unfinished business. Because of COVID, as she says, she hasn't been able to achieve the things she wanted on child poverty, on climate action, on housing affordability. And so it looked like she still wanted to have that chance to get those things done.
OK. So what do you think is actually the reason behind her going?
I think it's genuine in that, it has been a busy, 5 years for her. She came into the job really unexpectedly. During that time, she's had a family, a really young family. And I think it's really genuine to say, actually, I don't have the energy to go into a big election, and it was going to be a tough election, and to say that I actually can't get everything I need to the job. Yeah,
well, exactly, because the PM and Labor have both taken quite a big hit in recent polls. Is having Ardern out of the picture a positive or a negative for Labor?
I think overall it's probably a negative. She does still garner a lot of popularity, and a lot of people are really grateful to her and have switched to Labor because of her. But there is a real opportunity for whoever comes in to sort of clean or sweep the decks as such and get rid of some of the unpopular things. I don't think they're going to walk away from the big stuff like Three Waters, but in terms of a lot of the other reform, they may start winding it back. Things like the social insurance scheme, for instance.
OK, so who do you think are the top contenders?
I think the big front runner at the moment is Hipkins. One of the key contenders is the fact that they're going to want to avoid going to a wider membership vote. So that means they have to get 2/3 of caucus. That means that whoever has to come in has to be widely trusted and generally liked by most of the caucus. And that seems to be Hipkins might be the main contender there. I think Michael Woods is obviously a clear contender as well. He's a bit more seen as sort of an upstart and somebody who has got a fresh face and doesn't bring the pandemic baggage with him. I think it's a little bit harder for sort of others outside of those two to get that cross-caucus support. Remember, it's a big caucus, and that means a lot of people need to be brought behind one person. OK, we'll see how that plays out on Sunday.
Finally, former Prime Minister Helen Clark has blamed social media for the departure of Jacinda Ardern in a statement saying Jacinda has faced a level of hatred and vitriol which, in my experience, is unprecedented in our country. Does she have a point there?
I think it's a little bit condescending and perhaps a little naive to sort of say that this played a role. For the Prime Minister, nobody gets to be Prime Minister without having a thick skin, nor does any Prime Minister have the time or inclination to spend their time scrolling through Facebook and Twitter comments. However, it is clear that some of the death threats against the Arderns and her family have had their genesis in social media. And of course, the stress of having, the well-being of her family put under threat would of course played a role in whether or not she thought the balance was right.
OK, thanks very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Well, on Sunday, the Labor Party caucus will pick our next Prime Minister, but today they were reeling. Political editor Jenna Lynch was there when the bombshell was dropped.
Shock is an understatement. Her colleagues dumbfounded. I think that this morning has certainly come as a shock. It wasn't the day that we expected to wake up to today.
It came as a surprise. It wasn't the conversation that I had thought we would be having as our first caucus of the year.
Yeah, I'm just really sad and disappointed.
Surprised but grateful, resounding applause, hugs, a waiata. The opposition hit by the bolt out of the blue.
We all came together and talked about it briefly and about the election date, and then we carried on.
It's been a lot, from her meteoric rise to the leadership of the Labour Party 7 weeks out from the 2017 election. She took the reins of the country at the same time as preparing for the job of a lifetime, motherhood. But after the happiest times came the darkest times. The following year, the darkest day, March 15, 51 people lost their lives. And the Whakaari White Island eruption. With the turn of a new decade came perhaps her greatest ongoing challenge, a deadly pandemic, Ardern charged with protecting a nation, rising to unfathomable heights of popularity, a majority MMP government.
We will be a party that governs for every New Zealander.
Then the popularity plummeted. Unpopular policy and restrictions took their toll. The public turned. They protested. Right up until Christmas, she promised she'd stick it out. She was in it for the long haul.
Yes, I'm very single to my team that I'll be looking for that selection to be happening early in the new year.
But ultimately, she's got nothing left to give.
Now, Jacinda Ardern insists she is not quitting because she can't win the next election. So what do voters think? We took to the streets in Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch and in her hometown of Morrinsville.
Oh, wow, what the Oh, well, I'm very pleased to hear that.
And why is that?
She wasn't my favourite cup of tea.
I think it's a wise decision. Her own personal popularity has taken a hit in the last year or so.
About time, mate, to be honest.
Jacinda Ardern just announced she's no longer going to be Prime Minister from February the 7th.
Oh, that's pretty sad. I'm a big fan.
She's done it, Des. See you later. Let somebody else take over.
What? Wow, that's a shame.
I was kind of expecting her to stay on a bit longer, and, you know, I didn't really have any negative feelings towards her.
I think it's a good thing.
Good thing?
Yeah. It's been a tough few years to be the Prime Minister, hasn't it? So, yeah, I think she's done well.
Well, Jacinda Ardern was perhaps our most well-known Prime Minister internationally. She was celebrated for her response to the Christchurch terror attack and named in Time magazine's 100 Most Influential People. Nick Trubridge takes a look at reaction to the Prime Minister's resignation from around the world.
A resignation that reverberated the world over.
Morning. We begin with breaking news today. New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has just announced she's standing down.
Jacinda Ardern says she will not seek re-election.
Resigning as Prime Minister of New Zealand after 5 years, saying she has nothing left in the tank.
Jacinda Ardern thrust back into the international spotlight, one she's become very used to.
This was not just a leader of this country. Jacinda Ardern has really made her mark as an international icon, a global icon.
Because whatever the mood back home, the PM created a PR powerhouse abroad. From the United Nations General Assembly,
Me Too must become We Too. We are all in this together.
to international print and royal engagements, even the world's most famous talk shows.
Are you trying to create a diplomatic incident here right now?
Brand Ardern seemingly became one of our biggest selling points.
I'm so amazed, that you came to pick me up. Thank you so much.
I'm just a poor boy, nobody loves me.
He's just a poor boy from a poor family.
Her leadership here at home.
By donning the headscarf on that day, she drew a line and said, we are not going to attack people for their identity.
Often amplified afar. But it certainly wasn't all love. The Ardern government not always immune from the odd international broadside.
Even New Zealand, you see what's going on in New Zealand. They beat it. It was like front page, they beat it because they wanted to show me something. The problem is, big surge in New Zealand.
But despite waning popularity here, the friends she's made abroad may stand her in good stead if she takes up an international appointment. Nick Trubridge, Newshub.
Well, in other news, food prices shoot through the roof. What's behind the biggest increase in decades? That is next on Newshub Late. Plus, scientists close in on what's killing the hoiho, yellow-eyed penguin. Welcome back to Newshub Late. This is a time-lapse of Wellington today, where it is currently 18 degrees. Tomorrow, looking a little cloudy with northerlies and a high of 24. We'll have the rest of your weather very soon. If you're just catching up on the day's events, here's what you need to know tonight. If you're finding your supermarket bill is soaring, it's because food prices have had the biggest annual increase in 32 years. In the year to December, prices climbed 11.3%. That is the largest jump since April 1990. It was led by fruit and vegetables, up 23%, followed by grocery food prices and meat, poultry and fish. People holidaying at Coromandel's Opoteri Beach are calling for lifeguards to be stationed at the popular beach over summer. It comes after 7 family members got into trouble while swimming there yesterday. A man died while a teenage boy remains missing. New Zealand police have confirmed the Kiwi-born Supreme Commander of the Comancheros has been arrested in Turkey. Duex Ngakuru, known as Dax, is wanted in New Zealand for drug trafficking and money laundering. Authorities believe he's responsible for some of the world's biggest drug operations. One person's been killed with 6 others, mostly children, injured in a serious crash in South Auckland last night. Emergency services were called to the incident involving a car and a light truck on Porchester Road just before 11 p.m. 4 children are in Starship Hospital. 2 are reportedly in a serious condition. A police investigation is underway. And firefighters are battling a large fire at a pine plantation in Queenstown. Fire and Emergency New Zealand were called to the scene around Skippers Road on Coronet Peak just after 6 this evening. It's burnt 6 hectares of vegetation and people are being advised to stay well away from the area. Pilots say they are appalled a high-profile convicted criminal was able to avoid a body scan at Wellington Airport and board a flight without the knowledge of the pilot and crew. The Aviation Security Service has been unable to explain how it happened, but has confirmed it's investigating. Investigations correspondent Michael Morra has the story.
Body scanners pick up prohibited items a passenger might try to conceal, but at Wellington Airport on December 29, a man refused screening, telling staff to F off.
Our understanding, it was a very dangerous criminal that should not have been allowed to bypass security at any airport.
The man who Newshub's decided not to name is a convicted rapist with gang links. After abusing staff and ignoring screening, he boarded his flight to Auckland without intervention and without the pilot's knowledge.
That aircraft should never have been allowed to depart Wellington.
The Civil Aviation Authority says its process is to make contact with the airline regarding such security incidents, and the pilot was not contacted as the pilot is an employee of the airline. But the airline involved, Air New Zealand, says it was only notified of the incident after the plane had departed.
Is that too late? Well, I think that's far too late.
Airport police did speak to the man on arrival in Auckland. They won't say if he was charged with anything. AVSEC searched the plane but says no one was rescreened, either in Wellington or Auckland. Kath O'Brien advocates on behalf of airlines and says rescreening should have occurred for all passengers. But it didn't.
Just to prevent that opportunity for someone to have passed something to someone else or hidden something in another part of the terminal, perhaps. So that is a bit of a usual process. I'm surprised that didn't occur.
She says if rules are ignored, it puts others at risk.
I think it's really serious if any person skips airport screening or is poorly screened.
This can't happen again. No one's above the law, and everyone has to make sure that the processes are followed to keep people flying safe.
Newshub revealed in October an international audit found significant issues with security at all our international airports, with contractors and visitors not being screened for weapons or explosives.
This incident highlights again that AVSEC is failing its duty to the travelling public and to the New Zealand government.
It's a failure AVSEC is now investigating, saying the way the Wellington incident played out may lead to changes. Michael Morra, Newshub.
Scientists are a step closer to finding out what's been killing the yellow-eyed penguin, the hoiho. A quarter of the chicks died from a respiratory disease in the 2021 hatching season. Keisha Brownlee reports.
Hatched in hospital and eventually released to foster nests, these endangered hoiho chicks were among the lucky ones. Over the past 3 years, masses of hoiho chicks weren't so lucky and died from a respiratory disease, many within the first 24 hours of life.
Essentially just dropping dead in the nest. And so you kind of go into panic mode at that stage.
Researchers have just discovered what's likely causing it.
Our research has shown that there is a novel gyrovirus that is linked to samples that had the disease.
During the 2021 hatching season, a quarter of the chicks died.
Any chicks that died of the disease were sent to our laboratory for analysis, and we used next generation sequencing technology.
Technology we became familiar with in 2019 during the COVID-19 outbreak in Wuhan, where genomic sequencing technology was used.
We used that very same technology to help identify this pathogen in hoiho.
Initial transmission is still unknown.
At this stage, we're thinking it's probably come from a different bird and gotten into the penguins, and that's why it suddenly appeared in the last 3 years.
This latest discovery a springboard for future work.
To see if there is asymptomatic infections and to better understand how the virus and disease relate and the disease progression and how that happens in nature.
Giving researchers hope they may eventually be able to develop a life-saving vaccine for this new virus. Keisha Brownlee, Newshub.
Turning now to the world tonight, and it's just gone midday in Kiev, where Ukraine's Interior Minister Denis Monastyrsky and other senior officials are amongst at least 14 killed in a helicopter crash. Officials have given no immediate account of the cause of the crash, but it is known that the helicopter came down near a kindergarten and that infants are among the casualties. Tragedies are outpacing life, President Zelensky said in a video address at Davos. Strikes and protests have begun across France as the government attempts to raise the pension age from 62 to 64. Tens of thousands are expected in Paris and other cities, with schools closing and transport and health services disrupted. With the parliamentary process expected to take several weeks, President Macron will face a campaign of opposition, with further days of action likely. Well, he has 8 Ballon d'Or and a World Cup, but Argentina's football hero Lionel Messi now has a huge and unique tribute to a cornfield. A farmer in Argentina used an algorithm to plant seeds so they grew into an image of Messi's face. It covers half a square kilometre and can be seen from space. Well, Michael Bracewell stars for the Black Caps, and we are with Joseph Parker in Manchester, squaring up for the fight of his life. Newshub Sport is coming up next. Well, Joseph Parker has been forced to confront some harsh realities in the lead-up to his first bout of 2023. The former world champion's gone from heavyweight headliner to boxing on an undercard against unknown Brit Jack Massey. And even Parker's own trainer has warned him he's fighting for his future. Europe correspondent Lisette Raymer reports from Manchester.
You'd be forgiven for thinking he's the main event. Even as an undercard, Joseph Parker can steal the show. The 31-year-old is chasing his next title, Comeback King.
Let it flow, it'll come.
His future in the ring depends on it.
The pressure is on Joseph to perform well, and he knows if he doesn't put in a good performance, then he maybe forget about the big-time boxing.
Late last year, Parker suffered the first knockout of his career.
What a shot!
Dropped and stopped by the unbeaten Joe Joyce.
If I ever have a fight like that again, then I want to really just evaluate and see, because I don't want to be taking that many punches.
The September stoppage made a big dent in Parker's rankings, the former champion falling from number 2 to number 8 with the WBO. So 2023 is going to look different.
You got to keep busy, and I want to have 3, 4, 5, whatever fights, how many fights they can give me, I'll take it all.
But first, unheralded Brit Jack Massey.
I like being the underdog. I do like it.
This is Massey's first fight at heavyweight. Parker will need to win big to secure a bigger opponent.
I'd like to avenge a loss to Dillian White.
Joshua? There's renewed focus. He's been training harder, but there is at least one thing about his fight week preparations that hasn't changed.
Still playing poker, but it's not going my way. Like, the last 4 games hasn't been good to me.
How much are you down?
Like 100 pounds.
Saving his wins for the weekend on the undercard and under pressure to get back on top. In Manchester, Lisette Raymer, Newshub.
Black Caps all-rounder Michael Bracewell might just have booked his ticket to October's 50-over World Cup in India with a remarkable century in Hyderabad. Chasing 350 for victory, New Zealand found themselves in trouble at 131 for 6 before Bracewell smashed 140 off 78 balls. His innings included 12 fours and 10 sixes, but it was all in vain as the Black Caps fell 13 runs short in their opening match against India.
Sort of takes the pressure off a little bit when you're losing so many wickets. You've just got to try and rebuild, and you can't get too far ahead of yourself. So yeah, I think it's one of those things that once you're able to get over the line once, then you start believing that you can do it again.
Indian opener Shubman Gill stole the show, producing a sensational double century as he helped the hosts take a 1-0 series lead. OK, let's take a look at the weather now.
If the weather ruffles your feathers, there's nothing more comforting than a roof over your head. Start planning your home comforts at latitudehomes.co.nz.
Still don't know what I was waiting for, and my time was running wild, a million dead-end streets, and every time I thought I got it made, it seemed the taste was not so sweet. So I turned myself to face me, but I've never caught a glimpse of how the others must see the faker. I'm much too fast to take that test. Change it.
Well, we are almost done, but don't head off to bed just yet. It's time for our nightcap. And there's nothing quite like a free feed at work. However, workplaces in the UK may start stifling the sugar supply if Britain's health watchdog gets its way. The UK Food Standards Agency says offering sweet treats to colleagues is as bad for their health as passive smoking used to be. They say that while cakes at the office parties are well-intentioned, their regularity is getting out of hand. OK, that is our show for today. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Ingrid Hipkiss, Paul Maria.
The size, but never leave the stream of warm and permanent sand. So the days float through